All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Damien and Nick here, going to be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Looking at this coaching staff, Kirk Ferentz back for his 23rd season. Pretty successful tenure, 178 wins, 110 losses. And of course, he's coming off a Big Ten championship appearance where they got throttled by Michigan, but it was still a successful season for Iowa. Brian Ferentz, his son, he's back for his 7th season. I can't remember how many he's been at the OC, but he's been on the staff for about a decade now. Brian Ferentz, he's going to be the play caller yet again. And then Phil Parker, he's been with Ferentz since the beginning. He's been the defensive coordinator since 2012. They returned 17 starters, most in the conference, but all the losses are quite significant. Looking at this offense, Nick, same old, different year. You know, they're very one-dimensional. The scheme kind of limits what they can do. And of course, the quarterback play wasn't very good. Spencer Petras, very inaccurate, lacked consistency, only completed 57% of his passes, 156 yards per game with a 10-9 TD to INT ratio. Do you think Petras is struggling because of the limitations in the scheme, or do you think he's just not that good of a quarterback?
I look at the Hawkeyes, and I think it comes down to both. I think it is down to Petras as well. You know, like you said, that 57% completion rate is just not good enough. But I also think the scheme limits him a little bit. You look at Iowa, you know what you're going to get at Iowa every year. It's been 23 seasons with their head coach. You're going to get the same consistent sort of offensive play, defensive play as well. The offense isn't really going to shine. The defense is going to be real. You're going to highlight it here. They win their division last year. They play in the Big Ten title game. Like you said, they get throttled. But I think that they bring back enough talent on offense to produce this year. I think Petras can take a step forward maybe a little bit. You got to cut down on the interceptions. 9 is just not good enough. You want to maybe cut that in half. And the completion rate just needs to go up. 57% isn't good enough in the Big Ten.
He did have some nice plays off of play action altogether, like you said. Not much you can really do, I think, in this scheme. Last year, the running game was very poor as well. We'll get to that. Liddell Betts, the running back coach. They've got Gavin Williams and LeSean Williams, but not afraid contact. Looks like they're both going to. We don't know much about them, but I think focus on the offensive line, that's a bigger question mark because they do get 9 starters back on this unit. They do lose Linderbaum and Tyler Goodson, who was very good for them last year, but this is an undersized offensive line. I don't know if it's always been like this with Iowa, but last year it was one of the smallest, and it made it very hard to run the ball. That's not going to change any this year. Logan Jones, he'll slide in at center. Very similar mold to that of Linderbaum, 6'3", 282. Jack Plum at right tackle. He's a lone senior. Tyler Ellsbury, 6'5", 301. He's their biggest projected starter. They're still very undersized. I don't know if that's always been the case, but that's certainly not going to be the way to win, especially with this one-dimensional scheme. That was really zero-dimensional last year. It was such a troublesome year on offense to get anything going. They had a lot of different combinations. Linderbaum was, of course, the bright spot, first-round pick. But outside of that, this unit really struggled. What do you think they have to do to get on the right track here in 22?
It comes down to coaching for me. You look at Linderbaum, like you said, he was a bit undersized, but he really did stand out in this team. He gets drafted in the first round this year, goes pretty high in the NFL draft, and you got to replace him. So it's interesting who they can slot in there. The leadership isn't really there. There's not a lot of veterans on this offensive line, and the size is really bit of a concern. The coaches have to step up and see if they can make some adjustments in game because this offense is going to rely on the running game this year, it feels like. And if they don't have the offensive line blocking them, that's going to be a difficult recipe for success because if you can't get the blocks, they're going to be trouble finding the holes here. It's going to be interesting to see what the running game can do if they don't have that protection that they need.
They get back a good portion of their pass-catching group, though. I think that's the best news for them. Sam Laporta, one of the nation's top tight ends, a complete chain mover. That's really what he does. 53 grabs for 570 yards last year, right around that 10-yard per carry mark, or per catch mark, rather. Keegan Johnson, he was one of their best deep threats as a freshman. 18 catches for 352 yards. Nico Regini, he made some very impressive catches as well. I think they got 3 solid guys right here. Overall, I think this offense should be better. I don't really know why I'm saying that, probably because they get those 9 starters back, but the scheme, again, makes it very hard. What are your thoughts on this unit? You think they're going to improve or they're going to regress despite getting all this talent? And
Iowa is a tight end factory. I think Laporta definitely is a big bright spot, 670 yards. He has real potential here. He's a bigger tight end. I like what he can do. So if they can get him the ball, they target him a lot, maybe that'll work. But it's just questioning when you look at the quarterback play. I don't really know how much of a step forward they can get out of Petras. And it seems like they'll just be kind of same area, par for the course with this team. There's no real room for improvement, it looks like. I like having Laporta back. I think he's a really strong player that's a good tight end for Iowa. But in general, the offense will probably be much the same this year.
Yeah, I don't see much fall off or much improvement, but they might shock us because one thing they do is they play with a lot of discipline. They certainly play tough. It doesn't always lead to success, but that's one characteristic that's remained true throughout these 23 years for Ferentz. The same can be said about this defense. It's one of the nation's best. It's what got them there last year. These guys were turnover machines last season, especially in the secondary. But looking at this front seven, mainly the defensive line first, I expected Zach Van Valkenburg to be a breakout star, and he was, but he now departs. Lucas Van Ness, though, he was a breakout star. He had 7 sacks, as did Joe Evans. Those two are probably next up. Van Ness, he can play on the inside, play outside. I think more importantly, John Wagner, this is one of those veterans. They're going to expect to get a lot out of this fall. This isn't particularly a big unit in the trenches on defense either. They're all kind of in that 6'5", 260 range. They don't have great size, but they do have those athletic, disciplined ball players. They got a little bit bigger size on the interior of Noah Shannon and Logan Lee, but it's not overwhelming by any means. What are your thoughts on this defensive line that has some pretty good potential?
I really like Van Ness when you look at it, 8.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks last year, 33 total tackles in general. I think he's going to be an interesting player, see what he can kind of do with that speed. And Joe Evans as well, 7 tackles for loss, 7 sacks as well. You bring that when you're bringing back double-digit sacks from those players combined. That's a really good thing to have. I like the returners for this defense. I think they'll be able to take a step forward here. You lose some talent, like you said, but in general, they return those 7 starters, keep key players on the line. I think they'll be a very successful recipe.
Yeah, and right behind them, the most exciting part of this unit, probably the entire football team, is this linebacking core. It's probably the nation's best. You get Jack Campbell back, Seth Benson, Justin Jacobs. Campbell, 143 tackles. That was one of the nation's top tackles. Campbell had 143 tackles. That was one of the nation's top marks. He also had 6 pass breakups. He did a little bit of everything, showcasing that good football IQ and his sideline abilities. 105 stops for Seth Benson. He also had 8 QB hurries. So he showcased the ability to come off the edge a bit and chase the quarterback. And then Jacobs, he's very good with athleticism, like his range and coverage. He's also got some pretty impressive run-stopping skills. I think they have 3 elite linebackers here. What do you think this core ranks among the nation's best?
They are one of the best, like you said. I love Benson's ability to get around the quarterback off the edge. I think that's very underrated. But I also look at Jacobs. He had the least amount of tackles of this core group, had 53 tackles last year. I expect him to step up this year. I think he has a real opportunity here to show what he can do. He showed flashes last year with the 53 tackles, looked good at times. Can he step up this year and be a real dominant force for this defense? I really think he has potential to be one.
Yeah, and right behind them, the secondary, they were so good last year at elite. They lose 3 key starters, but they did lead the nation with 25 INTs. And that wasn't just the secondary. That was also those linebackers stepping up, getting great pressure up front as well. Riley Moss, though, he's back. He has thrived in this zone-heavy scheme. This cover 2 shell, Phil Parker rolls out. It's great, and they have the players that can play in it and thrive in it. A great vision guy in Riley Moss. Terry Roberts, he really struggled in Matt Hankin's absence last year, but I do think that now that he's got some experience under his belt, he'll probably slot into that second cornerback spot. I think he'll do pretty well. One of the returning starters, though, Kayvon Merriweather, 5th-year player, should fill the shoes with ease here. Jack Warner, of course, he leaves a big void at safety. They did also land high-end 4-star Xavier Nwakaba. He stays in home state, should see time early on. This is a school that doesn't exactly recruit at a high level, so when they can get a player like that, I think he might have even been a 5-star. So when they can keep a guy like that around, you already know he's going to see time early on the field and be impactful. Great range, excellent closing speed. The physicality makes him an all-around nice fit for this defense. What are your thoughts on this defensive secondary that loses a good bit but has a lot of potential?
I look at Riley Moss, 39 total tackles, 4 interceptions, and a fumble recovery last year, 85 yards returning on the interceptions. A lot to like about Moss. I think he has real potential here. And you look at Merriweather, 5th-year senior coming back. I love that leadership in the locker room. I think he'll be a key piece in this defense. And, of course, the wild card with the recruit, like you said, come out of high school, 5-star, keep him in the state of Iowa. Very interested to see what he can do.
Looking at our prediction here and this schedule, I wouldn't say it's overly a tough one, especially in the first 6 weeks or 6 games rather, but Iowa, same old different year. I think they're over/under set at 7.5. I think it's a little disrespectful, but it's hard to predict a lot of these games because the offense is just so disappointing. They can certainly win 11 or even 12, but I think 9 or 10 seems more realistic with this schedule and the offensive scheme. It's just such a liability for this program. It holds them back until they make fixes, kind of like Wisconsin, a team they play. These teams are not going to reach that next level. They're certainly capable of reaching. They don't fix their scheme. They host Wisconsin. That's the only reason I have them beating them. 2 very identical teams that play great defense but have very lackluster offenses. I think Wisconsin will have a pretty solid offense this year, but that's a lot to expect them to go on the road in Kinnick. Late in the year, though, who knows? Especially when teams like Wisconsin that are elite versus the run, they should shut them down. I think Iowa will probably win a low-scoring 9-6 type of ball game at home, but that's a team who stops the run very well. This team, that's all they do is run the ball, and they don't even do it that well. So I think November 12th, I'll give them the edge there. That's one of those wild card games I'm very interested in watching. People are going to be shocked to see me pick them to beat Michigan, but again, a home game. 9-3 is the prediction. I think they struggle on the road immensely, but they do end up with another great 9 to 10 win season.
I look at it, tough travel to Ohio State and play in Columbus. That's going to be brutal. And you look at those road games in the second half of the season at Purdue, at Minnesota, late in the season, wild card games in November, especially Minnesota. You don't know what the weather's going to be like there. That team can get up for it. You know, they have a strong roster in Minnesota. Interested what they can do. I think 9-3 is a perfect fit for this team. That's a solid season. That's exactly where you want to be if the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think this is a good fit for them.
Yeah, the biggest problem for Iowa is they got to go on the road. Sometimes you might turn the ball over a time or two or make some mistakes that get you down, and then they're forced to throw the ball, which they're not really built to do. So that's their biggest problem. Love Kirk Ferentz. I'm not sure how much longer he's got left with this program. He's done phenomenal work with them. Very excited for Iowa because I think their defense is great. I think their offense has a little bit of potential, but like I said at the top of the show, same old, different year. Iowa will be good, but not good enough. That's going to be it for this episode, Nick. As always, appreciate you joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
That'll be it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.